Hey everybody, just got back from seeing the new Halloween movie. I wanted to give a quick review of it with no spoilers, so don't worry, you can listen. I'm going to go over the good things before I go over the bad. That's going to be the gist of this. I'm going to lay out what was good before I lay out what was bad. So anyway, here's the good things. The mask that they had for this movie was easily the best mask since the first one, since the original mask. They used the original mask in part 1 and part 2, the original part 2. And then it was God knows what they did after that. They got more ridiculous and horrible looking. But the mask looked phenomenal in this movie. So that's always a big plus. Good job. How Michael Myers wound up looking like the Shape from the original one was well thought out, well done. And it wasn't like he just popped up in a movie dressed as Michael Myers from years earlier. Like he just disappears and reappears wearing a mechanic's outfit with a Captain Kirk mask. This one they actually tried to explain it, give you something that sounded logical, and they made it work. So kudos for that. The soundtrack was awesome. Basically, it was a reworking of the original soundtrack with a couple extra musical stings and scores in there. But it gave you the soundtrack that you know. It sounded like the soundtrack that you know. And it was a job well done, so that was cool. I would say it's better than Halloween Parts 4, 5, 6, or whatever the hell came after. I don't know if it's as good as the second one, maybe, who knows. The third one was a separate entity from the whole chain, so it doesn't even belong in this lineup, even though I really liked the movie. But from 4 on, this beats those. I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but it beats those, so that's cool. Michael Myers was age appropriate in this movie, which was nice to see. He's an old dude in this movie. It's 40 years after the original. He's an old dude, like a gray-haired old dude. He looks old. I mean, you get to see him quite a bit without his mask in the beginning. Never a full-on face thing for more than like a half a second or something like that. But you get to see him, and he just looks like a 61-year-old guy, 62-year-old guy. So that was kind of cool to see that they kept that. Okay, on to the bad. Sorry, folks. In the original Halloween, before you got into the world of the supernatural, you lived for like an hour and 20 minutes in the world of the natural. The kids were just babysitters. Everything was normal. Everything seemed accurate. People acted like the way they should act. There was nothing that far gone, nothing that far weird. This movie, 5 minutes in, you're saying that wouldn't happen. This would never be allowed. This is so right from the get-go, it would go astray. It would pull back, and it would kind of fall back into the world that you would hope it would stay in, but then occasionally it would just zhut out. And the directing style tried to emulate John Carpenter's look from the original movie, which was cool. You know, during a lot of the movie, you would look and say, oh, this feels like, you know, we're in the same universe as the original movie and stuff like that. But then, all of a sudden, they would throw in some scene that looked like it came out of The Matrix or Blade 2 or something like that. And, you know, and it's like, in slow motion, you know, and you're like, what? Where did that come from? You pulled it right out of the style that it was in and just threw in this. It just didn't make any sense. From a directorial stance, it didn't make any sense. And it didn't look good, and it didn't look right, to say the least. The movie tried too hard to do fan service. There was scenes in this motion picture that literally recreated scenes from the first Halloween. Keep in mind, they're trying to make this like this was the sequel. You watch one and then you watch the other. Yes, so there's 40 years in between, but you watch one, you watch the other. As you watch this one, you're like, I just watched that scene. In the same room. The same dialogue. Different characters, but the same dialogue. There was too much of that. Too much of that. The occasional nod, cool, but too much of that. There's plot holes all over this movie. I mean, I'm not giving away anything, but I don't know. Maybe they have something off scene that we didn't get to see, but Laurie is apparently not in working condition, to say the least. She's not. Yet she has this compound. I mean, you gathered that from the trailers and everything. It's just, there was just a lot of plot holes. That's just a little. I'm not even going to get into the other ones because you'll see it if you go see the movie, if you take your time, whatever. But I'm just telling you, there's plot holes all over this movie, and they're kind of striking. There's a scene in this movie where they jumped the shark so bad that no matter what little sins that they did earlier, that I was like, well, you know, they go in, they go out, it gets good, it gets stupid, it gets... There was one scene, or one part of the story, I should say, where they just jumped the shark so bad that there was no coming back for me after that. I was kind of like, what? Are you shitting me? No way. And it just kind of ruined it. So that was a heartbreaking moment. It was like probably about an hour in, and you're just like, oh, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. No, and for me, it never recovered after that. It was sad, but it was what it was. There's no men in this movie. Okay, maybe the sheriff, but there's no men in this movie. There's boys in this movie. But the boys are all either useless, wimpy They're more concerned with, you know, one's upset because he can't make it to his dance class, literally. Another one's just worried about his chapstick, literally. I mean, all the guys are just, I mean, they're just useless. I've never seen, it's just, that. Okay, they social justice warrior that living hell out of all the male characters in this movie. All the guys are like these little panty waists. They don't even know why. Don't even know why they're in the movie. They should have made it all female cast at this point, because all the men were just there to either be stupid, asinine, or wimpy. I'll tell you one thing. This ain't a spoiler, but I'll tell you one thing. As literally this man's daughter is missing, and there's dead teenagers everywhere, he sits there in his house playfully playing with a yo-yo, making it do tricks that he knew when he was a kid, while the women arm up with guns. I can't make this shit up. Okay, the ending of the movie, it just leaves you flat. I'm sorry. You watch the whole thing, you're kind of like, all right, whatever. And then when it ends, you're just like, that's it? Did they forget to add the last reel of the movie? This is the scene you're going to close it on? This is the... Really? That's it? That... You sure? This is... Really? Really? In closing, there was parts of this movie that were actually pretty cool. There were scenes in the movie that were really cool. You know what I mean? You felt like for a while you were in the same universe as the first one. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, this is kind of work. This is kind of working. You know, Laurie looked and acted like you think she should look and she should act. And Michael Myers was the same thing. You're like, oh my God, this is probably the best Michael Myers since the first one. And he looked like he should look and he acted like he should act. And all that was cool. And there was some scenes that were even cool little homages to the first one, nods to the head that were really, really cool. Not the ones where they went overboard and you were just like, what the fuck? But the ones that were really cool, and that was a nice touch. All in all, though, that couldn't save this movie from being what it turned into. I'm sorry. If they would have dialed back some of the silliness, if they would have left out a couple of scenes, if they would have just rewritten the last 25 minutes of this thing, I think that this movie would... There was enough of it there where you're like, oh, this could have been so cool. This could have been so cool. And then, nope. Nope. They came close. The DNA was there to make it really cool. But somewhere they just went left of center and left it all behind. Anyway, folks, let this be a lesson, I guess, that sometimes it's best just to let sleeping dogs lie. All good things must come to an end. Nothing can go on forever. We had the original, we had the fun, we can always go back and watch it, but it's time to let the Michael Myers thing go. It's time to let all that shit go with these movies. Stop Michael Myers and Freddy and Jason and all that kind of stuff, and stop, you know, hell, maybe even stop Star Wars in it. You know, it's just, we have what we have, and what we had was beautiful and what it was special, but we don't need more movies about killer sharks and Michael Myers, and appreciate what you had. Look back at them with love. They'll never truly grow old, and hold on to them. But to just keep rehashing this stuff over and over and over and over again, hoping that someday they're going to recapture their magic, I don't know. It just isn't working so far. Anyway, good night. God bless. Everybody have a great time. Rock out. Live life. Bye.